Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Kieran, and I help people using a spiritual perspective. Today, I have a cup of tea. It's not what this video is about. I don't know what I would talk about if it was a video about tea. I know next to nothing about tea. Other than that, it tastes pretty good. Um, Today's video, though, is not about anything to drink, but rather about how to feel, rather about what to feel and what it means to essentially to be depressed and not actually be able to feel in the way that you might have naturally been designed to, right? So this video will be essentially titled something along the lines of how to cure your depression, right? And so I think I'll put cure in sort of quotations there because I'm not a scientist, I'm not a doctor, I don't have a medical background, I barely even have a regular background, so I'm not an advocate for understanding the totality and the complexities of the human brain. We don't even understand it fully. We don't even understand it so much that there's myths about what we do understand. You know, you've probably heard that we only understand, or we only use 10% of our brain. That's a myth. That's not real. If you only use 10% of your brain, you'd have a lobotomy, right? We use 100% of our brain. We just don't understand 100% of our brain. So whether or not, you know, we're all walking around lifeless, that would be sort of if we only use 10% of our brain. We don't use 10% of our brain. That's a myth. You can look it up. Don't take my word for it. I'm wearing a sweater that looks like it's from the 80s. So, okay? But do your research. But the point is, there's so many myths about the brain and about the mind. And depression, of course, is one of those things. There's lots of studies that suggest that it's a chemical imbalance, and other studies that suggest that that's not true anymore, that we don't sort of go by that method. Sort of like how we used to think dinosaurs, were basically lizard-like, but a lot of them turned out to have feathers and stuff, if not the majority of them. Velociraptor, for example, right? We used to think it was this sort of like a reptilian-like creature, but it was like almost more bird-like than strictly reptile, right? So lots of discoveries have been made that sort of show that the other things weren't as true as we thought, right? So I'm not here to tell you guys about the ins and outs of the brain chemistry, of the genetic things that might be playing into part with depression, okay? If you're looking into that stuff, you would need a different channel, right? As I said in the beginning of the video, I help people using a spiritual perspective. So this is simply a perspective, an understanding of depression itself, of what it might be like, of what a solution might be like to get yourself out of it. Hence the word quote. No, hence the word cure, not quote. Quote is a word, they're both words, but cure is in quotations because this might not work for everybody. But anyway, I've done enough sort of bullshit explaining myself. Let's get right into the video, okay? So when I say cure depression, what I'm talking about is the feeling of stagnation within us, okay? Now, depression to me has always felt like a sort of wanting to do something, but you can't. That's what depression, I think, in layman's terms, has always been to me. It's always the recognition of something that should maybe be moving in a forward momentum, but isn't. And you know that that thing that isn't working is within you. So there's this stagnation, there's this emotional block, right? And the problem that I see with so many methods of curing depression is it involves a lot of doing. It involves a lot of action, taking steps, and so you'll often hear people say, oh, you're depressed. Well, why don't you just go to the gym? Why don't you exercise? Why don't you change your diet? Why don't you take up a hobby? Why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? And it all seems so pithy and not very heart-centered. It's a logical sort of thing, which isn't inherently wrong, but it's removed from the problem. It's removed from what's really going on. And what's really going on with depression isn't that you lack ingenuity or intelligence or wisdom even. That's not the case at all. It's so often we know what we should do, but we are unable to do it. That's why I describe depression as this sort of feeling of wanting to be able to do something, but you just can't. And so depression as symptoms has a lot of guilt, a lot of shame. There's obviously going to be pain there, suffering, loneliness, boredom, right? These are all like symptoms of depression. But it comes down to this fundamental awareness that there should be something better, that you should be better, that there should be this, you know that something's off, and yet you can't do anything about it, right? And so that's not a logical problem. So there seems to be this reaction, even in a lot of spiritual communities as well, that to get out of depression, you simply need to do more things. You need to do more, do more, do more, accomplish more. But that's almost the reason why we're depressed in the first place, is because our priorities at some point in our life have been shifted to the point where they were focused on anything or anyone else other than ourselves. So depression is not about doing as much as you can. It's about feeling as much as you can. It's about getting back in touch with your feelings. So if you want to cure depression, the object or the goal here is not to do more things. It's quite the opposite. It's to feel more. It's to get more in touch with feeling, not doing. Right? So if you're depressed, I mean, take that feeling, right? Take that experience of depression or grief or sadness that you may feel, right? And it usually, if not always, comes from the heart space, right? So you feel it right here. And at first it's uncomfortable. I mean, the feeling is naturally uncomfortable. It's like staring at a wall or something. It's like, you know, it's like staring into the darkness. It's just this, the longer you stare, you know, it's sort of like, have you ever, you know, laid awake at night in your room or something, you know, very dark, and maybe there's some shadows and stuff, but the longer that you stare at it, maybe like a fixated point, things start to seem weird. Maybe it's the shadows start to shift. Like there's this appearance that things are moving sometimes, but they're not. Really, it's just you're sort of playing tricks on yourself. But depression is kind of like that. That it's uncomfortable, and the longer that you stare at it, it starts to change, and changes form, changes shape. It starts to feel different, and it just starts to get a little bit more uncomfortable because now your mind is coming up with a story about it, right? And that's that's such a downside of depression, is because the mind is coming up with stories. It's coming up with reasons why you should not be depressed. And so a lot of people give practical advice. Like I said, they'll try to tell you to go to the gym and diet. And it's not that that's bad advice, of course. It would be good advice if you weren't depressed, right? Obviously. But the idea is that these things have nothing to do with the root of the depression. They are simply different ways of dealing with the human experience, and in an effort to feel better, right? Of course. So exercise, diet, hobbies, things like that. They're all good. I have hobbies. I have I go to the gym. This sort of things. Of course, when I eat healthy, I feel better, right? Naturally, my physical body feels better, which helps. It helps. So all this stuff helps, but you can do all of that stuff, and I have before, and still feel exactly the same way. Because again, depression is a feeling of missing something. And what you're missing is not going to the gym. What you're missing isn't X, Y, and Z. There's a lot of people who feel depressed and they throw themselves into their work. And they become famous, a lot of these people, or they become recognized, they become hardworking, they become successful in some way. And yet they feel incredibly depressed. I always think about Anthony Bourdain when I think about celebrity deaths. And I don't know if you know this is, but essentially, just a quick update on him. He was a famous celebrity chef sort of thing. He was a traveler. He had a couple shows. He had a pretty well-known show that won a couple awards, Emmys, I think. I think it was called Parts Unknown on CNN. You might have seen it, but basically he went to all these different places. He was a former chef, and he would meet all these other chefs and talk to people, and it was food-based. It was a food-based thing, but it was done in a way that it was almost like an art. It's this type of documentary thing. And it wasn't just about food. It wasn't just about whatever they were eating. Sure, that was part of it, but it was about the connections that he was making around the world, discovering culture. It was a culture thing. And I love culture. I love learning about cultures, experiencing new cultures. Right? I love that stuff. So to me, that was a really great program. And he got to travel around the world. He wasn't married, I don't think, at that point. So essentially, he could have traveled around the world, had sex with women, and had great food, and met a lot of people and saw a lot of beautiful places. That is a dream job. It is a dream job. I'm not saying having sex with a bunch of women is necessarily part of the dream job, but what I'm saying is he had a good thing going, and he hung himself. He hung himself in a hotel room in France. I don't know if it was while he was filming an episode or something like that. I can't remember, but he killed himself. He committed suicide, and he was depressed. He was a depressed person. Things he openly talked about in his books and interviews and stuff, but I guess it never really went away. So it didn't matter what he did. You understand? You follow my point now? It didn't matter that he became successful. It didn't matter that he followed his dreams. It didn't matter that he had one of the best jobs you could ever have. It didn't matter. Something was missing. And the thing that's missing causes a feeling within us. Because it is a feeling. Right? What's missing isn't logical action. It's not ambition. It's not a dream job. You know, you have all these people that become actors, musicians. And what happens? A lot of them do drugs if they don't outright kill themselves. Some of them overdose on said drugs. Divorces, breakups, limelight, can't handle the fame. You name a bunch of them. And those are just famous people that we would all maybe recognize, right? Heath Ledger, Mac Miller, these types of people. But of course it would happen every day to people that are not celebrities, regular people. I mean, they're all regular people, but not celebrities, right? It happens all the time. And we think that the solution is doing more, getting out more, But that's not a solution. Those are helpful towards the symptoms of depression, but they do not cure depression. They do not take the root out. And so depression, again, feeling there's something missing. There's something right here. And that's indicating of a feeling-based problem and a feeling-based solution. You do not solve a feeling. This is something that took me 28 years to actually understand. And am I even really understanding it? I don't know, but at least I have the awareness now that you cannot solve a feeling. It's not a puzzle. A feeling-based problem does not require an intellectual-based solution. That's not what happens, okay? The brain, the mind is good for certain things, but we've been cut off from our heart, and people who are depressed are cut off from the deepest layers of their heart. There's no other way to put it. So focusing on that is, I think, the only responsibility that we can take. So this is why I don't mention all the brain chemistry, whether or not that's true, or the genetics about it, because all that stuff is like a scientific, intellectual way of looking at why you might be depressed personally in your life. But where we feel it is still right here. It doesn't matter what's going on up here. It doesn't matter about the story that we've told ourselves. This is what we feel. This is what we experience. It doesn't matter what's told to us. It doesn't matter where our diagnosis is, which can just become another label. It is a real thing. I don't think anybody wants to say to themselves, well, I suffer from depression. And yet people will often use it as an excuse when they're diagnosed with something, because it's a way of identifying with their problem, right? It's this newfound idea, but it's a lack. It's a lack of something. And that's why you have the boredom. That's why you have the loneliness. That's why you have these things that happen as symptoms, because there's an internal mechanism that feels broken. And we intellectualize that. And we say to ourselves, well, there's something wrong with me. But the only thing that's wrong with us is the feeling. And the feeling tells us there's something wrong. Right? The feeling tells us there's something wrong. But the feeling itself isn't wrong. So this is why I often say there's nothing wrong with you except for the idea that there's something wrong with you. You're not broken. You just believe you're broken. And the only reason you believe it is right here. So when people, they go on about law of attraction or the power of the mind and all this other bullshit, yeah, great. But that's not solving the heart-based problem. It's not solving this. It's not coming up with a solution, because you're the one that's experiencing the feeling. The feeling is real. The feeling is giving you information. It's saying, hey, I don't feel okay. And your brain says a whole bunch of things about that. Well, if I just think positively, I can get out of it. If I do a bunch of action, I can get out of it. If I take this course, sign up here, listen to this person, I can get out of it. If I read a bunch of books, take up a new hobby, have sex, meet this person, go a bunch of friends, travel around the world, X, Y, and Z, have a dream job, all this stuff, that you'll suddenly won't feel lonely, bored, depressed, anxious, all of these symptoms. You won't feel it, but you will, because it's right here. So yeah, there is nothing really broken with you, but the feeling is what tells you that. The feeling is what tells you that. So your mind will come up about stories about that feeling, and they might be anywhere from positive to negative. But what happens is we ignore that the feeling itself is very, very real. And yet we focus on the mental solutions to that feeling rather than just the feeling. So it's not about doing. You don't cure depression through doing. You help your life by doing. You can give yourself more friends, financial security, stability. You can give yourself a lot just by simply doing, just by simply taking action. But you won't feel good about any of it. Trust me. I mean, how many times have I done things in my life, real legitimate good things, healthy things, and achieved those things and felt nothing. Didn't give a shit, really. Really didn't give a shit. Beautiful things that I'm ashamed to admit have happened to me in my life that I didn't give a shit about, because I did not feel like I didn't feel like it was worth it. I didn't feel like I deserved it. I didn't feel successful because of it. So it doesn't matter what I've done. It doesn't matter what I do. I'll keep doing it because I like doing it, but I won't feel good about it. I won't lay my head down at night and believe that I've made any difference, because there will still be that feeling of inadequacy. So doing has nothing to do with that feeling. It has nothing to do with the long-standing problem that has existed within you. That problem, of course, is from a very early age, which is usually when this happens, these feelings of sadness, nothing was ever done about it. You experience grief as a child in some form or another, and you internalize it. You don't have people that help you express it. You're not able to express it, and over time, it grows and it becomes deeper and deeper and deeper. And the longer that it goes, the more it persists, the harder it is to get over it. The escapism doesn't work after a while, right? It just gets, the awareness of it just gets more, you just become more aware is a better way of saying it. You just become so much more aware of all this stuff, and the feelings just get heavier and deeper. So depression is like this problem, or this something that's existed long ago. Maybe you were 8, 9, 10, 6, 5, whatever, young child age, and nothing was ever done about it. So over time it grows. So we try to solve our depression now in the present. So we think, well, we're depressed now. We feel it now. 20-something years old, 30-something years old. I feel depressed now. So you try to deal with it now because you look at your life now. And that's why we think, well, we have to do things. My life isn't perfect. That's obviously why I'm depressed. No, your life may not be perfect, but that's not why you're depressed. Your life may be hard because it's not perfect, but that's different. Having a hard life, going through difficult times, challenging times, is not the cause of depression. You react to it emotionally, sure, and that will help you. That will definitely be a big reason of your suffering, but it's not the cause of your depression. The cause of your depression is something that happened a long, long time ago, and so no amount of doing or thinking about it will come to a legitimate conclusion. The only thing you can do, and this is why nobody wants to hear it, is sit with yourself. The only thing you can do is face your emotions and how you know. Not how Kieran knows, not how Jimmy down the street knows, or how Samantha the lesbian knows, or Johnny the gay mechanic knows, okay? None of these, it doesn't matter, it's about you. Whoever's watching this video, if you feel depressed, if you understand what I'm talking about here, how you face your emotions is a personal process. And that involves number of things, but fundamentally all you're doing is you're trying to listen to yourself. And listening does not involve talking, which is the mind. Chatter, chatter, chatter. It's feeling this space. And you do it a little bit at a time. You cure depression a little bit at a time. Just maybe like taking medicine, a little bit at a time. You feel uncomfortable, you sit with that feeling for 20 minutes. 20 minutes. Not that big amount of time in the grand scheme of things. If you can face uncomfortable feelings for 20 minutes, you're one step closer. And then you stop. You don't have to keep going, but you do as much as you can in one sitting, and then you go, okay, whatever. Then 2 days later, it comes back. You try to do it again. 3 days later, you try to do it again. And it doesn't have to be a huge amount of length every time. It could only be 20 minutes at a time. But the idea is if you can do it for 20 minutes 10 times, eventually you can do it for an hour. and then it gets farther and farther apart. But all you're doing is feeling. All that depression is trying to say is there's trapped sadness inside of me, and it's existed there for a long, long time. Right? So if it's existed there for a long time, you're not solving a problem now. You're trying to come to a solution about something that's already happened. And if it happened years and years and years ago and it's feeling based, then you can bet that it has nothing to do with your intellectual ability. It has to do with your emotional ability, which is where we're lacking as a species. We're lacking in our emotional intelligence. We're severely lacking. There's tons of smart people in the world in any number of ways, lots of intellectual people, but almost and very rarely do we come across people with complete emotional security of themselves and then by default the people around them, the world, right? No. So I might even, I try to help people. I try to be a good person, whatever that means, but I'm not perfect. I suck. I suck in a lot of ways. And I just do. I suck. I suck, and I will suck. I'll suck forever. That's the point. I'll continue to suck, and I have sucked. But I'm not worried about, how that's portrayed anymore. I want to suck in a healthy way. I'm always going to have weaknesses and problems, but the only part of me that I feel nowadays that does suck is the feelings that we're talking about. So I try to help people. I try to, do my best. But there'll still be times where you get these uncomfortable feelings, and that's part of the spiritual journeys, that you're so aware of them. You're so deeply, ingrained with these feelings. They're so in tune with who you are now that you can't ignore them. You have to sit with them. You have to face them. So you have to match the feeling with feeling. So when people do tell you to do things, what they're trying to really say is you're trying to replace feelings. You're trying to bring joy into your life. So yeah, joy will definitely help with your depression, but joy is also an internal process as well. It's something you can feel naturally. You can feel at peace. You can feel happy. You can feel something from within. You don't need an external basis, right? And so this is the idea. So taking on intellectual ideas and logical opportunities will help you. I don't know, what do you want to say, 40%, 50%, but it'll fill your cup up halfway. But if your cup doesn't already have water in it, then it's going to empty out pretty quick, right? So you're looking to fight a feeling with a feeling, essentially. And so all you're really doing is, to cure your depression, just sitting with yourself. Just being available. That's it. You're just being available to the inner child that was hurt 10, 15, 20 years ago. And you're listening to them. You're listening to them because nobody ever did to you. That's the idea, guys. I hope this video was helpful. Let me know what you think about it. I like talking about stuff like this. It's definitely something close to my own heart. But anyway, I hope you guys have a good weekend, and we'll talk sooner than later, I hope, next week. Okay, guys, bye-bye.